I'm gonna mute.
Okay.
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have Pat Fedor, who we all know quite well. Congratulations, Pat. Pat will be joining us at our next meeting. And Tom, I believe,
I would just like to introduce one of my interns for this year, who's a principal here in Connecticut, studying to be a superintendent, Mandy Ryan.
public comment. Is there any public comment this evening? Yes, ma'am. Would you come forward and identify yourself, name and address?
My name is Janelle Lanuza. I live at 12 Johnson Court. And I'm here with some of my friends because we would like to see Waterford set a firm graduation date.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, before we move to the consent agenda, I'd like to thank Jody for her many years of service, just unbelievable effort, and Mim for the wonderful job that you've done for this board and all your wonderful contributions. We're going to miss both of you very much.
Thank you.
You'll be receiving a plaque.
Oh, that's okay.
It's all right.
Really save your money on that.
Yeah.
So many plaques.
Me too.
Right, seriously. If I can defer, I would prefer not to get a plaque.
Okay. Let's move now to the consent agenda. Are there any questions, corrections, or additions? And if none, could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
For a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. In our correspondence, we have an appointment from Park and Recs of Ken Walt. Ken, good evening.
Hi, good
Thank you for
evening.
coming.
I didn't realize I was talking, but it's nice to be here.
Good to have you.
Thanks to Caroline for getting me that email. I appreciate that, Caroline. Thank you.
Tom, your report.
Sure. Just one piece under correspondence. We received notice from the town of Waterford that they're forming a Census 2020 committee. And the school district's appointment to this committee is Mr. Joe Macrino. So we thank Joe for his service. Under superintendent's report, we're going to kick it off with our Waterford High School Class of 2019 report. As you know, this is a annual tradition here with the Waterford Board of Ed, and it's traditionally been given by our high school counseling department chair. We have a new chair this year. I'd like to introduce Leah O'Connor, new chair this year for the counseling department. Really gives us a comprehensive overview of not only some of the accomplishments and academic achievements of the class of 2019, but also what their postgraduate plans were. So at this point, I'll introduce Leah O'Connor. You have the full report in your board packet and a copy of the PowerPoint in front of you.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Good evening, Board of Education and community members and staff. Thank you all for coming tonight, and for those of you who read the report I provided last week beforehand. I was lucky enough to meet Ms. Benvenuti in the elevator, but other than that, I don't know too many people on the Board of Ed other than a couple. So thank you for having me here tonight. I'm excited to offer to you a presentation tonight that gives you an overview and in a lot of ways a snapshot of class of 2019 from last year. As we begin to look at this data, I think it's really pertinent for us to know that a lot of this data is self-reported by the students, and first and foremost, and we are still obtaining data on this class. And secondly, some of the things I'll share tonight are anecdotal a little bit, not too off topic, but basically what my seniors across 10 years of being a school counselor tend to say, which has some regional trends, but also specific to Waterford High School and my time there. So really the format of tonight's presentation, I'm going to try to not go too much into detail because I know you do have the report, but I'm happy to answer any questions following it if you do have any questions or anything that jumped out at you. But really, who is this class? Who is the class of 2019? What have they been able to provide us in terms of their snapshot? And when I use that word, I really mean not only, you know, where they applied, where they accepted, and where they attended, but what was the big picture of what this group of young men and women were thinking when they were graduating in terms of what their college and career and post-secondary goals might be. And within that, we obviously would like to promote the school counseling department because we are 4 school counselors who work really hard to better the lives of the students we work with and the students particularly, of course, in this class, along with teachers, administration, and other Board of Ed members like yourself who all have a vested interest in this group. You'll see tonight give us information on some data with the cost of college and so forth, as this is something that's always probably in the back of everyone's head, and I think does come to the forefront when our students and families are making decisions in Waterford and otherwise. And more so giving you a little bit of information on our several programs, data-wise, AP and SAT, those assessments and what we can glean from that information, as well as a couple of our programs beyond AP, which is Early College Experience, ECE, and CCP, which is our collaboration with Three Rivers. And lastly, the last part is really kind of where do we go from here? What is our current school counseling program, an overview of that. What do we do currently for college and career readiness and future steps, and then ongoing initiatives that all of us sort of as a partnership and stakeholders with not only the class of 2019, but where we're looking next. So when I tell you that we have a comprehensive school counseling program, I'm not just trying to use a big word and toot our own horn up there. I do think it is one of the most robust school counseling programs in the region when you may or may not compare it to different schools. We do use the ASCA model. We look at data regularly and look at the goals of this model, which interestingly enough, and my department spent a day with a presenter last week for professional development. They still are targeting academic, career, personal, social development, but they are having more behavioral and mindset shifts listed in their new rollout coming this year, which is a really interesting model given what we're seeing in kids today and what some of the needs are. When I say we have a robust individual and group counseling model of the 4 counselors or 3 counselors and myself as a counselor as well, we do extensive individual meetings, at least 1 per year, a group meeting, and then a actual school counseling lesson several times, actually each quarter in a classroom with all of a grade level. And we are very well known for the junior planning meeting, which I'll get into later, but I think really factors into class of 2019 and our graduating class when they're making their decisions. I said before, data as an essential tool. We've had a few different data points that we're able to pull information from, some of which are more prevalent than others in our use, but most recently was Decision Ed, which we're being trained on. And in my just limited, I think I'm having more extensive training. Our department is coming up next week, but I'm impressed with this data tool for us to kind of take the big picture and see where we can go with kids. So this is really what I'll come back to throughout this presentation, but essentially when you look in the green, our class of 192 kids last year, 69% went on to a 4-year college. The greatest trend I want to point out in the room tonight is one, that we have since 2015 in 5 years, we have a 9% increase in students applying to, or actually attending a 4-year college as self-reported and as matriculated. And the 23% to a 2-year college has gone slightly down, but in general our military service has been about 1 or 2 kids per year who actually do enlist. While we do have maybe 5 to 7 or 8 every year really interested. And then the employment internship or undecided number has dropped from 16% to 11. So that's, I think the picture that we're painting and looking at it big picture 5 years across is a good one. Some of the summary points I included in the report were some of my own deductions as well as in speaking with other colleagues, counselors and otherwise. You'll see that 88% did pursue that 2 to 4 year degree, and 12%, which is actually 23 students, had that the undecided, pursuing employment, internship, or military. And that 12% is a percent that I'm fond of as a counselor. I think we all care about this group, and we want to offer them as many options as possible. So I'll talk a little bit about some of our programming, but when we have something like the college fair, we call it the post-secondary options fair, and that's a little bit difficult for us to kind of get around sometimes. So it's a lot more, post-secondary options fair. But with that being said, it is really more all-encompassing because all of our kids are not going on to college, and there are some really appropriate options for our students who may fall into that 12%. I mentioned the 9% increase, and there's more kids not attending college or they're showing a trend toward more college-going students, but a notable percentage maybe not attending college or the technical military option. The chart that I included in the report, and there's an extended appendix. Thank you, Mr. Powers, for helping out on that. But I originally was sorting this by us trying to look at what trends stand out the most. And there's really a lot to be pulled when you look at where kids applied, where they're accepted, and the end game where they eventually attended. One of the most important things I want to point out is that we have a lot of our kids are choosing to stay in Connecticut. They may get into other places, as you'll see a lot of singular numbers in the appendix, like someone got into Fairfield or Lafayette or wherever it may be in California. But then with their other options, they are choosing oftentimes, 87 of them in fact, for the in-state option, be it our flagship university or actually even if it's not, Southern, Eastern, Western, or Central, they may be choosing another school such as Fairfield, Sacred Heart, or otherwise.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, absolutely.
First of all, I'd like to commend you on, this was a very thorough report.
Thank you.
I have to say, it's one of the most thorough reports I've read in a long time.
Thanks.
However, I do have some questions on your apply, accept, attend, and since you just mentioned that. On page 3 and the preceding pages, there are a number of spots where the accepted is lower than the attended. And I didn't know if that was just typos, or can you explain what happened there? For instance, the University of Connecticut, 16
were
accepted and
25
25 attended. And there are a few other ones along the way that are similar.
So we were looking at that too, Leah, Marcia,
University of
and
Hartford, 3 and 5.
when this was pulled out of which site?
It's pulled out of Naviance. Yeah, we did
Naviance.
discuss this as well.
So it's pulled out in early June, and then they might not have had the first acceptance, but there might have been like on a waiting list and then get accepted,
So the accept numbers are
So
not
the-
necessarily true?
So the
Or up to
accepted
date?
numbers are the first blush at acceptance, not the final ones. So the attended ones are the actual kids attending. So
Okay.
I do think that's where the inconsistency is. So
Okay.
the attended numbers are solid.
Okay.
Could you tell me the one school you mentioned again? I'm sorry.
Um,
Was
so
it?
Page 3.
University of Connecticut, University of Hartford, on page 3,
Okay, yep.
and then.
In your report.
So
Yes.
what's
Scroll down.
interesting is about our program Naviance, which I think also happens. So if we think of seniors, right, in the span of December where some are finding out all the way until August where it changes.
Mhm.
Our seniors they seem to fall into a certain pattern, and they were after them for surveys and information, and you can't get your cap and gown until you fill out the survey that we need. And I think what happened here, and I've seen it happen before, is as they're coming down, we're saying, can you please update Naviance, please update? I want to say like 80% of them do, but there's this group that don't click that they were accepted, but all of a sudden, oh yeah, I'm going here. So, so that's why there is that.
It's
We've
self-reported.
Okay,
yeah,
that's-
and
that's
self-reported,
the
they may say that they're like
That explains it.
going to work in, Africa doing X, Y, and Z, when in reality, Africa might be their parents' basement with these beautiful drawings in the back. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I
Okay,
think
so the
that's excellent
reliability
feedback.
Yeah.
And we are trying to, it is something which I'll get to later in this, we are trying to often think of a way for us to be able to obtain this information as a final, where are you and what are you doing now come September, October, November, because we know kids might move, and we know in August a decision might have changed.
Right.
So, thank you.
And one other comment, today's newspaper was full of, the schools that, are not allowing people to attend, with low graduation rates, less than 50%. And University of Hartford and, University of Bridgeport, Western and Southern were on those lists.
In Mitchell.
And
And
Mitchell,
Mitchell.
and Mitchell too.
Mhm.
Although, the Southern University of Bridgeport, University of Hartford, and Western, Connecticut were not only low graduation rates, but high price in that category. And so I'm wondering, are we promoting these schools, and how do the kids, come upon their selection of?
I think I can best answer that in a little bit, but because I think we're promoting schools, but as much as students are coming to us and we find it appropriate based on selling
Right,
information, but more or less these schools are, if I told you how often they're like, can we come do this? Can we talk to your kids? And now through social media, they're connecting with them over email, over Instagram, everything that's part of their world, and it depends on how much these schools have a lot of money. It's a business.
Gotcha.
So oftentimes, University of Hartford's a great example. I see every year they have free fee waiver. So anyone can apply, and they actually sometimes will do like on the spot, go on the Saturday morning and find out if you get in. Why wouldn't you want to do that, right? You
Yeah.
come back Monday, hey, I'm in the college. So there's a lot of gimmicks that happen. I think we stay pretty much in the middle because we're not trying to,
Right.
do that kind of thing. But there's a lot of reasons for that.
Okay.
So this statistic I kind of went over already, but I just wanted you to see, bright, beautiful picture of Connecticut. I think if we look at careers and otherwise, we see sometimes a trend of people leaving Connecticut, and sometimes the state, depending on what you're looking at, gets a different kind of rap. But for students and where they're going to college, this is where they're choosing. Whether or not they stay on for their careers is a different story. But this is, what most students are choosing, but definitely not all. The cost of college is in the picture. I know that that's a detailed information within the report. It is frightening every year to pull these numbers and to see the increase, especially those of us who try to put our kids through college in a decade plus. But these are the prices of the other higher ticket schools that are within Connecticut or close by, or these are all Connecticut. You see from Conn College at $69K a year up to Yale at $71. So the good news is, to defray the costs, our students are really taking advantage of advanced placement classes, early college experience. We have a high number of students taking the classes along with UConn, which those credits transfer everywhere, and we have some other scholar-related programs. Like I mentioned, I'm not going to dive too much into the AP data because I know you do have it and it's extensive. Really, you may see some of these numbers and think, well, why is something going down? Why is something going up? Our total number of students last year was 116, which is, we had a higher year at 128 and the year before it at 126. There's a lot that's been going on with College Board, if you've read in the news, and there's a lot that goes into why those numbers might be. And I can tell you it's not because anything about the teachers at Waterford High School or the counselors or really the kids themselves. I think it's a political animal, the College Board in and of itself, and families are trying to make the best decision both for what's on their child's transcript and challenging the student, and also what's affordable. So AP, we've seen a slight dip. I think that might be because we have students also taking early college experience, which you don't have to get a 3, 4, or 5 on the test to have accepted out of school.
And with most of or many of our students attending Connecticut universities, the ECE is a transferable credit
Right.
across that system.
As
But
is
you
the
had a
college
smaller
group.
class last year compared to the.
Slightly smaller.
Right.
We did. This is the SAT school data. This is from the actual SAT school day that we have every year within the school day. I know Mr. Powers gave a little bit, or a lot more, I think, information about this in his report. But the point being, I thought this actual graphic was a good one when I had logged into the report center at College Board. I'm a pretty visual person. I like to see, so it's school, state, and total group. We are, exceeding those benchmarks of 480 in the reading and 530, I don't need glasses yet, right? 5:30. And we are, higher than the state in a lot of areas and also the total group. So that is something that we pride ourselves on really throughout the curriculum, and this is helping students. I also can tell you that students are choosing more test optional schools. At fairtest.org, you can always pull a list of this, and the schools seem to be growing every year. I had a young man with me today after school who was applying to all fair test schools or ones that did not require a standardized test just because he wants to be a dentist. He has excellent transcript, but his test scores are lower. So this was just the little Snapchat on the right was when we were at Three Rivers last week for a field trip with 20 students we took there. These 3 kiddos were applying on the spot. I just mentioned both of the programs because I think you are likely aware of them. We do promote them a lot to the students. They are highlighted in the program of studies. And we have a really high enrollment for these 2 programs. So lastly, the last part of this presentation is really the school counseling overview. And I think because I'm so passionate about it, I definitely tried to pull a lot from the report and put it in there. But going off what's up there, I will tell you probably the 3 most important things. One, about our program. I mentioned before we're doing developmental lessons in every grade level. We're getting every single student on Naviance and doing a personality inventory, a career interest inventory, a strengths sorter. We're not just saying these are your results, see you later. We're diving in and asking these kids in a round table, whether it's only 5 kids in a room or 15, what does this say about you? What's your strength? What does this connect to in your personal life or with your future goals? And we are really having them self-assess. And then we see them again and again in different capacities. The junior planning meeting does take upwards of 60 hours per counselor. The counselors each, Jason, Kelly, and UN each have around between 50 to 60 students in each grade level. And between really end of December through March and even into April, we hold a junior planning session with each student and their parent or guardian, should they be able to come in. These are intensive sessions. If you ever do hear, oh, well, that counselor wasn't available, it is probably because we are working really hard to have these individual meetings, and we've heard from kids that they're very valuable when they're applying to college or thinking about something other than college. College and military rep visits, I mentioned in the beginning of the PowerPoint. I would just talk about who came to our college fair. We kind of went and just as a trial, tried to maybe have a couple different other options this year beyond some colleges and some of the regular ones where we still invited them, but we had a youth manufacturing pipeline. This is connected with Electric Boat. There's a lot of information on it, and this is a way, we had I think about 40 students in a room learning about a career choice that will probably not have a lot of loans when they come out, and they'll be a marketable student with, or actual in a career with benefits and otherwise, and a skill. Field trips, we took kids to Three Rivers last week. 15 students applied on the spot. There were 5 of them who were either juniors, underclassmen, or were still unsure and just wanted to get on a college campus. But that was a great event. And I think we're just doing a lot more outreach. You may have heard we've done coffee chats. We're trying to do more of that for parents who can't come into night events. We did Parent Academy. I'd like to offer some webinars, social media outreach, trying to get going with the Twitter there. And all different kinds of initiatives to really get our kids listening and parents also on board. This is a little picture from our field trip. They had gone so far as to make personalized signs, t-shirts, prizes. They're really excited to have our kids there, and it was a great day, especially for our students. Over half had never been to a college campus. These are just a few areas. I think you've heard these before about, what are we doing to focus on college and career readiness. We talk to kids about these types of topics in their sessions or lessons all the time. And we also talk to kids a lot about things that aren't up there at all that affect their future, being it social emotional concerns or connection to the community or whatever it may be that they're dealing with developmentally or otherwise, whatever barrier it might be, which in my mind really factors into college and career readiness. And that leads us to this question: how do we measure the correlation between readiness and post-secondary success? How can we better develop students' soft skills and resiliency? My department and I like to throw around the resiliency topic a lot. We are interested in social emotional learning and how all these factors kind of fit together. So lastly, this is just ongoing initiatives and next steps. I think I outlined them pretty detailed in the report, but we are, assessing the resilience of students. I'd like to share this report or pieces of it maybe with department chairs at upcoming meetings, so we can all be on board about how our curriculum and current programming supports this. Continued work with faculty and local colleges for credit-bearing courses is ongoing. We try to foster these relationships with the CTE, the career technology education efforts, which are becoming more and more prevalent. We are thinking about, proposing of and considering a school to career coordinator position at Waterford High School. This is a service to students that many regional high schools offer. And as much as we want to get scholarships out there and help students filling out an application or that kind of thing, the counselors are, and we do. But that type of position would be extremely beneficial, in my personal opinion. And then lastly, continuing to look at the data, look at our goals. What are we aligning our programming with to support kids? And our end goal, of course, is always to comprehensively service all students, have those meaningful connections. I'm someone who's all about relationships. I can tell you the 3 other counselors I work with every day are, and we have amazing relationships with kids and parents. And we just hope they reach their full potential when they're making that big decision of graduating and where they're going next. So thank you. Are there any questions?
Great, I
Thank
read
you.
all of this stuff, it was wonderful,
Thank
very,
you.
very exhaustive. On page 3, I know Marcia had some questions about college acceptances as well.
Okay.
There's a statement in both your report and the PowerPoint that it said of 26 schools capturing a minimum of 4 applicants, 14 did not accept any applicants. So those aren't listed, correct? Those colleges wouldn't be listed because they didn't accept anybody?
I think we pulled the zeros out,
Right.
but they are at the end in the appendix. So there are quite a few. If you go to page 20, those are the 0
Those are the
acceptances.
ones with the
So
zero.
like Tulane had 4 applicants with 0 acceptances.
Okay. So I
UMass
worry
Amherst.
about top tier schools, cause that's just me.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Top tier schools.
You're concerned about them?
Yeah, that
Yes.
whether our kids, when they apply, can get in. Where they
Mhm.
choose to go, that can be a financial
Yes.
decision. But I very much worry that we need to produce the caliber of students that can get into top tier schools.
Mhm.
And this suggests that none of our students were able to do that last year, correct?
I might disagree slightly. And
Okay,
the
that's why I'm asking the
Yeah,
question.
I think the reason is because, and again, yeah, we did focus a little bit on the whys of going elsewhere, but even if you have a singular student into a school that's not maybe a one-off one that students apply to, that is pretty substantial. So last year, for example, if you go, there's a lot of ones in here, right? Like if you go to page 19 in the appendix, and some of these are not easy schools. If you look at a College of Charleston, 1 student applied, 1 got in. We had a Loyola, James Madison, Coastal Carolina. Syracuse was 7 with a 0.
But I don't mean to be a snob, I wouldn't
Sure.
consider those top tier schools.
No, I'm not saying top tier, but I'm
Okay.
saying a
No,
private
no,
liberal
I'm
arts.
saying it doesn't look like
Mhm.
we got any kids accepted into our top tier schools last year. Is that a fair statement?
I would call our attention to page 6,
Am I,
where, no, you're fine, and this gets at your question. Certainly are there students applying to some elite schools in low numbers. We don't know, are all those 1s and 2s, are those the same kids? I don't have unique numbers, but on
Right.
page 6, if you look at that 3rd bullet down, 25 of our 2019 graduates are attending schools classified as most competitive, including UConn, Virginia Tech, Miami, Simmons,
Right.
and so on.
We had a Coast Guard Academy last year.
And obviously Coast Guard Academy.
Mhm.
I absolutely understand your point, Mim, about that. What we don't know, and I don't know, that might be a lot of work, is how many unique students does this represent? So did one student apply to BU, BC, Fordham, Tufts, Cornell, or are
Right.
those unique students? Either way, it's a good question.
And also, we have students who make inappropriate choices for their
About what they're
colleges
planning.
regularly. So I can tell
Right.
you BU has
Right.
done an excellent marketing campaign every year,
Right.
and they get kids really excited. They came in, I believe they were in here this year in our career center, and they're like basically doing cartwheels at the college fair. And I think part of that is you'll have kids who say, well, I want to give it a shot. We're never going to tell them not to. But then the numbers increase from maybe there was one or two who arguably should have been accepted. Who knows? But maybe there's 5 who really should.
And
Their
you're aware
application.
that a number of schools invite students to apply,
Yeah,
only to reject them so that they can
increase their
be
numbers.
more
Yeah,
selective.
very true.
Yeah, it's a business. It's really
Yeah, it is
hard
a
for kids to
business.
understand that too.
And for a lot of these schools, even the application comes with a fee
Mhm.
that they get to keep. I
I get what you're
just
saying.
because
Good point.
I'd
Yeah.
like to see some kids
Yep.
get into Yale and Stanford
Me too.
and Harvard, and I didn't see that this year. That's all I'm saying.
I think we had, and I'm just kind of going on. I personally, in my caseload last year, did not have one of those like wham senior
Right,
classes. I
right.
did the year before and the year before that, so I don't know if I'd have to look
Right,
differently
it
at
goes
the
in
data.
cycles,
Yeah,
absolutely.
we didn't have kind of the Ivy League culture in the top 10 kids, I would say.
Chris,
Go ahead, let the ladies go.
No, that's okay, go ahead.
All right, I'll go.
We need to teach the high school kids. this.
So, I'm on page 2 of the report, of the
PowerPoint.
presentation, and 15, page 15, bullet 3 of the report. When we look at the non-college directives, you mentioned the electric boat manufacturing pipeline.
Mhm.
Where is that? Where are those numbers on your chart? Is it the third bar or is it the last bar? And what other programs do you have besides manufacturing? Or do you have any for the non-college career-minded?
Okay, so let me just go to I want to have both in front of me.
While she's looking, Joy, you must have read yesterday's paper to see the big article on students in the vocational trade after high school.
Well, I have a soft spot for those kids,
A day
so.
behind and read it.
Career. They're falling.
Exactly.
Oh, sorry. So to answer your question, they're falling in the third, a career education bracket
Okay.
of 19%. So those are kids going to Lincoln Tech, any of the tech schools, or pursuing something like we just explained. So you're asking big picture, what are we doing for these kids? How are we offering manufacturing type options? It is a conversation for sure. I'll be completely honest that I think maybe in the past 2 years I've heard the conversation become more of one for a lot of different reasons. I've attended with my colleagues some different CTE related conferences in the middle part of the state where a lot of those magnet type schools and whatnot have like a full manufacturing program, right? Like we have woodworking and advanced wood, but we don't have like an electrician based program or something like that with an apprenticeship tied to it or whatnot. However, given that, I am seeing a lot. We have counselors serving on the CTE board in the school. We have a capstone experiential part of class of 2023 curriculum coming up. We are trying to expose these kids to this more and more. It is a mindset shift completely. Because I think there are parents who are telling their kids it comes probably from a really good place, like college, that's the only option, and of those colleges it needs to be a top tier school. Then there are this group of kids who are bewildered and don't know what they're doing and might not have the support at home, and they might not have the skills. So we are trying, when we do these career lessons with them, to have them think differently, and then I would like to see the college fair in the future. Maybe it's not post-secondary fair, but maybe like an undecided senior day we offer in the spring and then bring some of these groups in, or we offer earlier on to sophomores or juniors so they can see what tech options are out there. And then we can influence our programming with it and our curriculum.
Because there's so much more than manufacturing and the trades.
Sure.
You know, allied health, all the lab technicians,
Absolutely.
you don't even need a 2-year degree
Yeah.
for all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Working with the elderly, I mean, in the health areas, it's exploding right now.
I will say for the health areas, we have it's escaping me the name of it. It's like the Health Careers Club, I think that's right. And they have after school meetings on a weekly basis where they're inviting professionals in. I think we have great regional relationships with, I know East Lyme had offered a night the other week, which was women in careers, and they were a whole host of different training levels where you could do a round robin, visit the tables. There's just kind of like different, we were invited today to something related to women in STEM, but necessarily not needing a 4-year degree, but just
Or a
young people in
PhD.
general, right,
Yeah,
like to
okay.
be a tech. Exactly, so I think we're on that path, it's a great conversation, and I think we collectively do wanna think about how we can, moving forward,
Yeah.
target that 19%.
And I think, the employability out of high school avenue, obviously the natural fit around here with the jobs EB are adding are around manufacturing. Those other areas that you mentioned are very relevant. So we're beginning to work, but that takes outreach and hours of time to make that. And I think whether it's this budget cycle or next budget cycle, a school to career coordinator type position that is really building a direct link and pathways for those students so they are employable and employed out of high school. But we don't have robust numbers of hours right now within our current staffing model to be able to do that outreach direct to the business world. So we're starting to design a position around that, because there are opportunities. You look in this area, whether it's in healthcare you mentioned, does that mean, do we introduce a CNA program at the high school? We have in hotel and,
Yeah.
property management, the Waterford group. I mean, they're a international player in hotel and hospitality. Are we tapping into them? We have Diversa Partners right over down there on 156. They're the leading headhunting agency for Silicon Valley in the world. So we have a robust business and industry center here in southeastern Connecticut, but building those relationships takes time and people skills. So
Yeah, because
Great point.
sometimes it's just a first step before they go on to college and get a degree.
Yep.
Sometimes there's that gap. They don't want to make that jump, but working as you work towards a degree
Yep.
It's
is
better to
a
find out if
great
it's what
option.
you wanna go to college for than
Right,
And
find
a lot
out
of
4 years later.
right.
A lot of them also need coaching on the soft skills, like a resume, a handshake, showing up on time to the job, wearing what you're supposed, all of those things. 15, 16-year-olds, some of them, it's fine, they will understand, but other of them need that counseling, other of them need that oversight to be successful for that
Chris and
opportunity.
then Craig.
What about me after that?
Jody? Go ahead, Jody.
I'll go after Craig.
My question kind of curtails what Mem is asking about students going on to higher level college. And truth be said, I talked to Caroline and Tom early this afternoon trying to understand about the GPA. And I'm concerned about the GPA and how one gets to the GPA. And I have not read the handbook, which is on my next step. But I feel like the method that we use to calculate the GPA makes these kids less competitive versus other kids. And I feel like because of that, maybe these kids are not getting accepted to these higher level schools. So when you look at a Waterford student versus a student anywhere else in the country, we have, and correct me if I'm wrong, this plus and minus on their grade, correct?
Plus,
Is
yes,
A minus?
yeah, as far as their actual
minus, is that
alphabetical,
correct?
yes.
You're saying yes, and I see
Yes.
someone saying no, so I'm confused. Is it yes or no?
So on their transcript, there's everything from an A plus to an F, A plus A minus, B plus. The GPA, however, is on a 4.3 scale. So, and colleges are aware of that when we send a profile, and then we have a ranked GPA on a 21-point scale. But the actual, when you're looking at a transcript, I know someone wanted to look at a transcript earlier today. I have a copy of one blacked out if you want to pass it around, but those letter grades are on there.
I
Does
guess
that answer?
it does, but
Okay.
I think that, again, to Mem's point, a lot of schools aren't doing that. So like here, an 80 is worth a certain amount of points versus schools that aren't doing that, which is worth a certain amount of points. So then you're going to apply. That's big money for the parent in terms of tuition, because an 80 here is probably worth like 2.77, where an 80 where there's no plus or minus is worth like 3.0. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the answer to that. We can certainly begin to
if I could
study
jump in?
that issue.
I actually have an appointment to speak next week with a community member who happens to be a staff member at a local college who wants to walk me through what you're describing is a pretty non-traditional grade weighting system that some schools have started to go to. And this community member wants to meet with me to talk about what that looks like and the impact it could have on kids. So it's not something we're doing now. It is something I plan to learn more about next week. So you've got great timing with that. You're just 1 week ahead of me being able to answer anything, unfortunately.
I think it's important because from the financial end of things, that's big money for a parent when they're shelling out money to determine where the kid is going. So again, back to Mem's point, they're not gonna go to Connecticut College if they're only getting 8,000 as opposed to if their GPA was higher and it was worth more and there were more meat to it. Now they're gonna get 21,000 and then they'll go, hey, I'm gonna go to Connecticut College and I'm not gonna go to Eastern or a Southern because of
The
that.
one thing I would like to add is universities know when they're looking at kids from 10 different schools, they're looking at kids from 10 different grading systems, and they know that they're always looking at apples and oranges. And so a lot of universities will actually just look at what the grade range arrangement is in a school and then recalculate the GPA based on their own system to determine what they believe your GPA is, not what the high school is reporting it as. Because yes, there are ways to engineer a weighting system so that GPAs go up or go down. And universities know that, and they recalculate for that based on their experience of having seen what these kids are capable of and knowing the different ways. There are 12-point scales, 5-point scales, 4-point scales, 4.33 scales, 4.6 scales. And so universities do often do that recalculate based on only the subjects they're interested in and assigning their own weight to the grades that are reported.
Tom, you wanted to
Yeah, to your point, Chris, we can certainly do a regional or at least, similar type high schools as Waterford over the remaining months of the school year. So I'll have Mr. Powers work with Mr. Hauser on that and see, are we the norm or are we the exception? What are the trends? Are we in terms of GPA?
Right, where do we fall versus others?
Yep.
Just so, from the parent aspect, they're getting the best bang for their
When they
buck
put
in
their
terms of
students
money.
in front.
Because I think that goes to where they're applying to, and are they gonna go there because of money, what they're getting in financial aid? Because it all comes down to
Makes sense.
the GPA.
Right.
Great.
Thank you.
I guess this ties into something that Joy was saying, because I went to a tech school for high school out at the Grosso.
Okay.
And then, I took drafting and went into that field for about 15 years or so, and now I'm a software engineer, so I don't know how that happened, but, I wonder if some of those kids that are going to these schools and not graduating is maybe they weren't really cut out for college necessarily. Like, I said this once before, is not every kid needs to go to college.
Right.
You know, the technical or vocational path is actually a good thing for people because that's where they fit in. That's perfect. And college might not be right. And sometimes the way these colleges market themselves, I think kids feel that pressure to
Feel
go.
the pressure. Yeah.
And they end up going, and it's, now they've got the financial burden that they take with them from,
Yeah.
dropping out of college, and now they're kind of starting over again, trying to find their way when maybe the vocational path is
Yeah.
right for them.
To that note, the thought just occurred to me actually in doing this kind of as a project, going through this data of just in my role this year, I've seen, when we had some secretary transition, a few emails came to me of graduates last year, and I've had maybe 4 in 8 weeks of school, going to a different school. And the ones who weren't mine, I didn't ask why, but the 2 I did, and we had a little email back and forth a little bit in a nice way. But I would be interested to have that question answered by them. Like, what are you being retained? Right, that's a difficult question for us to track. It might be doable if we have the correct contact information. And second, was it the right fit for you? And if not, why was it not? And sometimes it's not that we didn't prepare them; it's that they innately felt the pressure that they needed to go apply to this type of school, when in reality they were probably the kid who wasn't successful.
That's what happened to me. I went
Sure.
a semester of college and it was terrible.
Mhm.
And I ended up just working from there, and I eventually got a degree later on in life. But
Mhm.
that was exactly what happened.
And your story, I feel like, is one that's shared by many people, which it would be helpful for a student even to hear anecdotally at like some kind of venue, so that they don't feel that like, oh, I can still be successful and have, my goals.
Because I was a class president, and I was a smart kid supposedly, and everyone kind of expected me to go to college, and really, I just didn't belong there.
Right. Yeah. Well, you have that self-awareness now, which is great. Like, some of our kids and parents don't, right?
I just wasn't ready for the wrong way, so.
Yeah. And I will tell you, I think our whole office sees right before the November 1st deadline. Like, I love Halloween, but I do not like it. I'm a school counselor. And tomorrow, November 15th, we have I think this is a record year, Jason, would you agree, a record year for kids applying early. Again, is that coming from pressure? Why did you guys apply early? What was that all about? Like, I have these conversations with kids, and they're like, well, I have to. I have a better chance of getting in, right? Right? And I'm like, let me check my crystal ball. Like, it's really difficult, but that's even trending earlier and earlier, but kids are feeling the pressure to apply early.
Well, I won't speak for Craig, but I'm happy to help and attend and work with kids.
That's great.
So feel free.
Okay.
My email is waterfordschools.org. So I'm very happy to help.
Jody,
Okay.
you had a
Yeah, I just have a question. The guidance counselors, now, 3 of you have 235 students?
Yes.
Are they're all from all different classes? Okay, and then you have 118. Is that manageable? That just seems like an awful, I want an honest answer.
Are you addressing me?
Well, whoever.
Or do you want
Tell me to open my mouth
It just seems
eventually,
like
or
a-
something.
Yeah, I mean,
Maybe
I can
50,
answer.
we
I
have
can
50
answer it.
pretty
Yeah.
much from each class?
So I will say the reason that I was behind the movement for school to career coordinator was because our numbers regionally are high. I'm not talking about California or otherwise. ASCA model will tell you 300 to 1. But when you want a curriculum doing all these great things, we are high in that. The other schools are averaging around 200 to 1. I know Waterford lost a counselor 10 years ago, I'm saying. I don't know, ish. And it was never replaced. And I've asked about the mindset surrounding that, and it is a longer conversation, but manageable. Our IEPs and 504s, are going up. We're spending a lot of time in those types of meetings.
Yeah, you also, you also have sped students and with your 235 and with your numbers
Yes,
also.
and we case
So
manage
that's where you are.
504, which is
Yeah.
about, I think the counselors with a 235 have about 33-ish students on their case, so to have about 18 504s I case manage, and we attend all the PPTs and that. So I mean, we're trying to service all students,
Yeah, it's
right?
a lot. It's a lot.
Mhm.
And then I think a school to career coordinator is great. We used to have one years ago when we first started the Learning Through Service. That coordinator was also a school to career coordinator for the kids, and I think it's really important because not all students want to go on to college, and that's why I was happy with when Tom started the pathways, because I thought it could give the students an idea of not only what classes they have to take, but what type of career that is, and then if they could shadow someone or that is in that career before they graduate high school
Right.
to see if they like
it or not like it.
Because I was like Craig. I mean, I started off in college too, but I didn't. I went one full year and then I came back and went nights, at U of H, and because I really didn't know what I wanted to be.
Yeah, and I think we have a lot of resources in school. Like if you ask a staff member, what's your story? I mean, I
Yeah.
worked in advertising before this,
Yeah.
so I was led to this for different reasons. But I mean, I think there's a lot of these stories that are actually meaningful and poignant for kids to hear, and maybe they can think like, oh, like maybe there's a different path that works for me.
Because we try to look at each student individually and make sure that we give them the best that we can for their after they graduate. So, but it was an excellent report. I
Thank
agree
you.
with them and Marcia.
Leah, just to piggyback on the 504 PPT, are you also seeing an increase in mental health needs?
Absolutely, hands
So,
down.
Yeah, so.
So, I
in
mean,
addition
some of
to
our
everything
days,
we're trying to do-
like, some of
more.
our days, you might see a blank Outlook calendar, well, not a blank, you'll probably maybe see however many appointments, but, there's not really room for like a plan in there to plan something like this oftentimes, because your day could start off with something that happened at home or something so out of your locus of control in a high school. I think we're not the only ones seeing that. You know, I would like to say that East Lyme is seeing that, and the counselors are, you know, absorbing that and using our, I think, skills, but we are very solution focused because we don't have an hour to get into it with a kid. So sometimes we will clear a calendar to do that if it's, you know, what level it's at, but to really have a systemic approach of helping a mental health issue when it comes into the school, and then the parent shows up who's also unloading some mental health concerns, it's a lot. It's a lot to try to troubleshoot that and also provide on a ethical level too what is appropriate.
Right.
Other comments, questions? Yes.
Also, when you ask questions about GPA, would you also ask about class rank?
Any other comments from the
That's a
board
good
or
question.
questions from the board?
I do, Greg, if you don't mind. It's Amanda Gates Lamont. Sorry, I'm via telephone. But Leah, are you also helping students and parents navigate the NCAA clearinghouse for athletes? So that's like another layer of the college process as well.
We're helping them navigate NCAA, EDOCS, Common Application, the coalition to the application, financial aid, the FAFSA, a lot. Because they come in, I mean, they're confused. Parents are overwhelmed, and it's really, and we do a lot of programming where we're trying to see a bunch of kids at once, right, beyond individually, like a activity Thursday, come down. But, you know, the kids have other things they want to be at. They don't want to hear us drone on and on about the FAFSA. Like, it is a difficult thing. But yes, we are servicing these students to the best of our abilities with NCAA and otherwise.
Don't the coaches help out with that?
Athletic director, sure.
They do, yeah. I wouldn't say the NCAA is
Yeah, I
a
know.
major, but it plays a. There's questions we get all the time where it's like, well, let me get back to you on that. But yeah, I think what's happening is I'm noticing the private college counselors are getting a lot of business because parents are overwhelmed by the Common Application, by the push of all the schools. Like, it's just a different culture than I first saw maybe 10 years ago. And maybe parents have this, I think we're servicing them with all the things they need for that, but there's this comfort with, well, I need someone to help my child. How am I going to say that they were involved with 60 hours of community service? What action verb can I use to better put my student forward? Which is,
You talked
you
about
think
it being a business,
it-
so a business
right.
has
It
grown
is.
up to help kids get into college.
right, where I have so-and-so in front of me who might not have the opportunity at
Yeah.
home, and they're like, I did community service. I'm like, no, what you organized, the Spirit Week raffle, no, like, you know, so that they're promoting themselves, but some kids are getting coaching and others aren't, which make the whole process not equitable from a grand
Yeah.
scheme.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your time tonight, I really appreciate it, and if you have further questions, I'm happy to email away, so,
Yeah, I want to
thank
thank
you.
Leah for her hard work in this report, and really thank the whole department. We have Jason Adler here tonight, Milan Chen from the department here tonight as well, and our fourth counselor, Kelly White. They, as you can see, they spin a lot of plates each and every day.
Yeah, they
It's,
sure do.
It's a demanding position in 2019. Under other, just a few quick hitters. Want to thank Great Next School for artwork here in the board conference room and in the hallway. We had parent-teacher conferences earlier this week, very successful turnout. We had Veterans Day programming, formal programs and ceremonies across 4 of our schools, pre-K to 8. Clark Lane's first year doing a formal ceremony yesterday afternoon, and Craig and I had the opportunity to attend that. It was moving for sure, and I was at House Wagachi's as well, and I know Craig attended his throughout the week. Parent Academy was held on October 29th. Athletics, as you know, postseason play. We have many teams involved in ECC and states. Girls soccer played this week. Girls volleyball played this week in state competition. Last and not least, budget planning continues, and Mr. Mancini, Craig, and myself will be meeting with directors and principals early December to begin to really finalize a budget that will get to you at the January meeting. So that concludes other.
Any questions or comments for Tom on his report? Okay, we can move on to committee and other reports. Board committees, finance.
We had a pretty robust meeting the day before Halloween, so we talked about some things which as the board you're going to see this evening. We reviewed a draft of the capital plan. Joe went through the specifics and we had some additions to that. We also talked about the budget assumptions, which aren't very different from a year ago, but you'll see those tonight. We had a really wonderful report that hopefully Joe will hold on to, because when this board goes through its own budget deliberations, it's a salary comparative for contract employees. So where we've had questions in the past about the auditorium position or a secretarial position, Joe got data from all over the state that shows high and lows and average, and you can see where Waterford falls in it. Excuse me. And we, along with that, we discussed the overview of the, once again, auditorium manager position and service through learning position. So, but we have job descriptions for those and now the comparative. Although with the auditorium, there really isn't a comparative. Nobody has that position because we've sort of blended a bunch of things together. But that was it. We had a nice meeting and we'll do some of that work tonight.
Great, thank you, Jim. Softball, Craig or Jody?
Craig, you go ahead. Okay, we had a meeting, and we're gonna have another meeting next Thursday to go, hopefully we can get started on the project. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the early stages.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just,
we went to the school building committee meeting, and
mhm.
basically, we're gonna move forward with the plan that was submitted to them. They brought in, there was another proposal brought forward, but, there was a lot of discussion around that. So anyway, we're moving forward with what was recommended to the school building committee right now.
You know, we need the architectural plans first, so Abby can start the soil samples and all that, and go through our town commissions first, because we have to do that first before we could start anything. So hopefully, this coming Thursday, we'll get, you know, some of that information so we could start the process.
Okay, our board liaisons. Chris, anything from Warren?
We had a meeting today. They had a representative from, is it Caves or Caves, how do you say it? Caves. They'll be there this weekend. They have a big seminar, the Marriott I'm gonna go to on Friday and Saturday. But something that I found interesting is they talked about all school districts, and Tom, this is all in your wheelhouse, about making the superintendent's evaluation, making the written portion of it not written but verbal or oral, because if things go bad, and I'm not saying that they would go bad, the media only captures the bad part because the evaluation's FOIable and they only focus on the bad. So to save the superintendent, they feel like board should go to putting that piece as it being oral and not written, so then there's nothing to capture. So just a thought, and they're gonna talk more about that.
It's too bad we can't have honest reporters anymore.
Right, well, they're gonna talk, well, that's why it was brought up, and especially in our area of southeastern Connecticut, so.
It's tough out there.
Right, it's tough,
There's
so
a columnist that
Right,
will jump
so-
on anything.
that was probably the big takeaway from it, so that's it.
Thanks, Chris. Craig, Atlanta, Florida?
Nothing new.
Jody, Mike, you have anything from this search?
Oh, I do, but just for instance, we should have all reporters watch the Sesame Street episode of When You Write, they had a newspaper, and it's who, what, when, where, and why. And we should just remind them of that. But anyway, youth service is very busy. They're getting ready for the Thanksgiving baskets. I was able to go to Stuff the Bus this year at all the schools, and I want all the principals to please thank your faculty and your students. I mean, what a tremendous outpouring of of food that they gave, so they're gonna make they're gonna feed a lot of families. And also we're able to keep our food locker stocked at youth services, so we'll be able to help people, hopefully through the winter too. They also started their Adopt a Family and also Adopt a Senior Citizen for their Christmas program. So if anybody would like to, help out with that, just call youth services. We had our second Veterans Coffee House this past Tuesday, and it was really nice. We're gonna have another one on September 11th, if there are any veterans here. It was September 10th, the second Tuesday of every month, December 10th rather. If you can come from 9 to 11 upstairs at youth services, or if you know anybody that's a veteran. It's nice because we usually have like 1 or 2 speakers, and then everybody just can sit, and all the veterans just sit and talk to each other and go over some of their experiences. And also we have a resource guide if they need help, finding help, getting help with some of the, challenges that they have. We have that available too. But I think it's just nice, one gentleman said that it's just so nice to talk to some other Vietnam veterans, because they really went through a lot. They all did, really. And we have a 93-year-old World War II veteran that was in the Navy, and he comes every month, and he's so nice to talk to. He really is. So I think that's about it. The counseling is still really, really busy. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. Any reports from
Yeah.
liaisons to this board?
I'm actually on the Board of Education's liaison for the Retirement Commission for the town. She'll need to appoint someone to that. We just did our budget last night, so we'll need to support that because historically the town has underfunded the retirement and other health benefits portion. We don't have a lot of staff within the education department. Most of those folks are covered with TRB or MRF, but we certainly do have a need for the health benefits, and some folks get a Waterford pension, small pension, that we cover.
Thank you. Any liaison reports to this board from other boards? Okay, new business. Discussion and possible action on capital improvement plan. Tom?
Sure. It's the 5th year the district's developed a capital improvement plan to address current and future capital needs. I want to thank Joe Mancini, Jay Miner, and Ed Crane, who really do the yeoman's work on the capital plan in terms of forecasting, a comprehensive approach to capital. You can see the spreadsheet. Really, we're most concerned with fiscal year 21. The out years are really projections and not really what this board and the town are. It's more of an information, here's what lies ahead. You can see some of the highlights. We're earmarking money, continue to earmark money for high school turf field replacements. You can see this is the second installment of the bus lot office, which is due to the municipal project up on Route 85. 75 last year, 75 this year. Another $50,000 for school security. Obviously, I don't want to detail that too much in public session around that. We asked for and received $100,000 last year in capital for school security enhancements. We'll get $35,000 back on that $100,000 due to a school security grant that we applied for and received from the state. That is our district's reimbursement rate. And then you can see the 5th installments on the learning boards for the classrooms. Those of you who've been in our schools on different tours see those in action. So we're asking for the 4th year installment on that. And our pretty much every year security camera as cameras throughout the schools reach end of life replacement costs on that. Those of you who are at finance, we talked at length around TV studio replacements. We did some homework on that. Ed really did a detailed, with Joe, a detailed look at those. It was significantly more. We think there was equipment in both the middle school and the high school, either currently not working or rapidly approaching end of life. We think we can piece together for that dollar amount, upgrading mostly the high school, with the middle school receiving some high school hand-me-downs. It is important we keep the high school studio operational. It supports the public access channel here in town. So what was a much larger number has been whittled down.
Yeah.
But that equipment is how old, Craig, give or take, at the high school?
Well, the high school is new equipment since the school was built. so that's 2013. The middle school equipment was hand-me-downs to the old high school, and it was probably well into its life cycle. So the middle school probably received equipment that
Say
would be
20
back in
plus.
like 2008 or
Yeah.
2007 is new. So that's antiquated.
Happy to answer any questions. Joe did the heavy lift on
Greg.
capital.
Is that grant info I forwarded you, with any luck with that or no?
Ed is looking into it, so Craig Merriman had forwarded a grant through PURA, which is kind of the governing agency for millstone type facilities around potentially upgrading TV equipment, and it has to have some tie to like public service and that sort of thing, but Ed Crane is looking into that. Yeah, thank you for saying that.
Marcia?
I don't know, how to add this, but, the field house flooring and bleacher renovation, when we were talking about that, we were also talking about doing something about the locker rooms and changing areas in the pool area.
It's in there. We increased the amount by 25,000 each year.
Okay, but I would like to, since you were specific enough to write field house flooring and bleacher renovation, I think the word pool should be in there somewhere too.
Okay. It is in the backup of the write-up, but
Okay.
I'll put it up on the front sheet as well.
I
I'll
just
call
don't
it pool
want it
enhancement.
Any other comments, questions? It's the board's pleasure to move to approve this capital plan. Someone like to,
I make the motion to approve as presented.
is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. B, discussion of possible action on the budget assumptions for fiscal year '21.
These are the guidelines we ask the board to set each year that really are the roadmap for administration to build a recommended budget for you. They're extremely similar to last year. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, a motion then to approve.
I move to, approve the assumptions as written.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. C, review of project oceanology, new organizational documents, and possible action for a revised cooperative agreement. Tom?
Sure, I want to welcome Jim McCauley, who's the Executive Director of Project O here tonight, in case there were questions that we couldn't answer, and he was more than willing to attend. Waterford's been a long-standing member of Project O, and it's something our students benefit greatly from. Project O has developed a new interdistrict cooperative agreement to upgrade their bylaws and agreements with districts which were circa 1973-ish. So, obviously, they were due for revision. They've been reviewed by administration, and again, it's been an important part of student life in the Waterford Public Schools, and I would recommend we continue our participation. And if there are questions about the district aspect of this, certainly Craig or I can answer. If there were questions about Project O, we have the executive director here.
Jody?
I just had a question. I just want to make sure, on the sheet from Shippen and Goodwin, it has in there, on the back page, about the budget process. Now, will we know in time for our budget, in case they're, I know on the other, on page 5 of the agreement, it's, it mentioned on item D, page 5,
We actually
It's the-
received a memo this week
so
on
you'll know ahead of
rates.
time for
Yep.
our, but it won't affect our budget down the road,
Came
your
out
budget
this
down
week.
the road. Okay.
And they've always been very good about getting
Oh,
us that
yeah.
number prior to the budget.
No, Project O is great.
It's been very modest increases. I think they're forecasting a 1% increase.
That's great.
Any questions, comments? What's the pleasure of the board? Someone want to move to approve this?
I'll make a motion.
Chris?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
We love Project O.
We do.
Great
Yes.
job. I don't swim, but I love it. Not going on any boats.
discussion and possible action on the,
Did we do a motion before we go?
Yeah.
Did we?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
wanna make sure.
I made it.
I seconded it.
Just making sure.
I'm vice fast.
possible action on the 2020, 2021 school calendar.
Sure, it's, the goal, in our region is really to maintain those regional PD days in November and March. You'll find those on this calendar. The calendar in front of you reflects consistency with past calendars with one modification. You might notice that Labor Day falls extremely late next year, and in keeping with our last Wednesday in August start date, that would mean essentially just about 2 full weeks of school prior to Labor Day weekend. With that said, in conversations with WFCT leadership and in covering it as a team, we're recommending on the proposed calendar that the Friday heading into Labor Day weekend be a no school day. So we would have 3 days of school the first week, 4, 4, and then 5, as opposed to 3, 5, 4, and kind of gives kids that opportunity to get, with the, again, almost 2 full weeks. It's a proposal, and other than that, it's a pretty standard approach to a school calendar.
Questions?
Our area schools do a similar, do we coordinate with other towns near us?
Yeah, so the regional calendar, the mandated regional calendar law was recessed several years ago. With that said, the group that I belong to, superintendent's group at Learn, that I belong to, 33 towns, there are some nuances. Not every district celebrates the Jewish holidays, for example, so there's room for nuance. What's pretty typical is either starting that last Wednesday in August or after Labor Day. The other commonalities are really around April break being fairly common, same week. As I mentioned, the regional PD days. I wouldn't say all are doing the Friday heading into Labor Day off. Some of us that discussed it like the idea and put it in. And again, I serve at, we all
London
serve.
doesn't usually even go back until after
Right.
Labor Day.
After Labor Day,
Who
yeah.
knows what they're gonna do?
Groton started after Labor Day too.
Tom, the spring recess.
Yep.
In April, bypasses Easter.
It
Doesn't
does.
piggyback on Good Friday. Was any consideration given to that? What was the thinking?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Good Friday floats from late March until late April. That second, in this case, second week of the 12th through the 16th is the typical week that the region kind of agreed upon takes. The reason for that is because obviously not every staff member who works in Waterford lives in Waterford, and with families in other towns, that it's kind of a mutual agreement that we all try to have the same week off. Do all abide by that? No, because of some of those individual allowances, but that's the traditional kind of regional week.
Any other comments or questions from the board? What's the pleasure of the board?
Approval? Yeah. I make a motion to accept the calendar as presented tonight.
Is there a second?
It's not presented with the third day off, right?
It is,
Or
if
is-
you look
oh,
at
okay.
Friday,
Okay,
September
Friday,
4th,
okay.
and it
NS.
says NS.
Okay, got
Yep.
it. Thank you.
Under the discussion category, I know there's been talk about this set graduation date. I know that we've had some dialogue. Using this as an example for this next school calendar year, will you and when do you decide, so parents that are looking to do this all-night grad party and all these sort of things, walk us through how that will play into a calendar like this for next year?
Sure, so our traditional approach to setting graduation date is at the April board meeting, looking after presumably inclement weather days have ended, setting that graduation date. The law that was passed this past July in 2019 allows districts to set a firm graduation date pretty much at any point during the year, no earlier than the 180th day of school. So for example, if you look at the 2021 calendar that's proposed tonight, right now, the last day of school is projected to be June 11th, 2021. What the law says is, okay, graduation is going to be on June 11th, 2021, and if we have 7 snow days, it doesn't, I don't wanna say it doesn't matter, it doesn't affect graduation day. Seniors will still graduate on June 11th. The issue becomes, there are other statutes in the state of Connecticut that say students must attend 180 days of school. So, students would be expected and required to attend those 7, let's say it's 7 snow days, attend school those 7 days beyond graduation, or they are marked absent. That has repercussions for a district in terms of not only affecting a student's absentee rate, individual students, but chronic absentee rate at the high school, our next gen accountability index with the state of Connecticut. So while students can graduate on a given day, other statutes in play require them to report to school after graduation. That would be after they've taken exams and are issued a diploma.
So it could have a negative financial impact.
It could, because depending on your chronic absenteeism rate, there's certain requirements under the chronic absenteeism law to implement certain programs and certain aspects, but that's, that option does exist for a board. Traditionally, prior to the law, you look at April board meeting and set a graduation date.
Thank you for answering the question.
You're welcome.
Now, could we have a second to the motion?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next, acting on this board's meeting schedule for next year. You have it in front of you. Are there any concerns or questions? I know that you have vetted this for religious holidays.
We have.
I serve on another board that also meets on a Thursday night, and when you switch it, I have to run from one meeting to another. So if you stick with the, you know, the Thursdays that it's supposed to be, we're all fine, but, for instance, the September one.
Yeah, we moved that up a couple of years ago to address class sizes, perhaps. If we were in a situation where we saw a spike in enrollment at the beginning of school, that we're not waiting until the end of September.
But
But-
since you're back on you're back that week, you might wanna,
And
you're
then
back so early in August.
November and December's obviously around the holidays, and Thursday, November is in alignment with, in terms of the election and then the swearing in of public officials.
I personally think September 17th is too late to worry about numbers. We need to do it in August. And so I would like to, if possible, like to see the September date pushed back to the appropriate Thursday.
Is there a consensus on the board that that would be agreeable? Does anyone have a problem with doing that?
No.
Doesn't matter to me.
I'm okay
That would
with
be
that.
September 24th.
And then the November one is because of Thanksgiving, right?
Thanksgiving and the
And
election.
swearing in.
Oh, yes.
Swearing in is usually the week after that.
Yep. And then December's traditionally been the second Thursday
Right.
to avoid.
Swearing in next year's presidential.
Would someone like to move to approve the meeting schedule with that one change on from September 17th to September 24th?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's approved unanimously. We next have a tuition agreement with Franklin.
Yes, you might have heard me last spring say we had 3 districts approve cooperative agreements with Waterford. Obviously, Basra and Norwich came before this board. Now Franklin approved it at a board meeting last spring, but their required signatures were just had, so that's why the agreement's coming before you for formal adoption. It mirrors exactly word for word Basra and Norwich's agreements with the district.
move to approve this?
So moved.
Jody, is there a second? Great. Any discussion?
Just a real quick, how many kids are attending just in our freshman class from all of the schools we're
Sure.
agreeing with?
You might recall, we were late to the game.
Yeah.
Typically, high school choice takes place like right about now,
Yeah.
in terms, so we were being on March, April. Are we at 5, Mr. Hauser? 4.
We're at 5, one has returned to Norwich, we're at 4 right now.
So we'll be
Okay.
paid for 5, but 4 attend.
Even better.
Even better.
But I know Mr. Hauser's been out minimally to Norwich so far for
Yeah,
presentations.
we're in the process right now of going around and doing those presentations, and we're already getting some interest. We've done one of the 2 middle schools in Norwich, we've got the other one scheduled in about 2 weeks. There's already interest from the school we presented at, and some word of mouth at the other school, but obviously they haven't heard us yet.
Tom, can you give us in either the Friday note or in the packet that we get an update of those numbers, just so like if you went to Basra and you promoted, how many you got back from Basra, so we know each month? Sure.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
It is approved unanimously.
Thank you.
Second reading of policies. Craig?
As presented at the last meeting, this is a community relations policy about gifts. This was separated so that we have the gifts in for personnel, and you'll later see we have it for board members as well, so, yeah.
Any discussion by the board? Someone wish to make a motion to approve as presented?
I'd like to move that the Board of Education approves and adopts policy 4090, gifts to school personnel as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We're ready for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
I'll second it.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are unanimously adjourned.
Amanda, I hope you feel better.
Me too. Thank you so much.